Welcome to the Mind of Psyche, where we talk music, addiction, comedy, culture. If you like this content, please leave feedback and subscribe. Let's get into it. On this episode, I'm discussing all things education, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When we're in high school, we're asked, what college are you going to? What do you mean, what college am I going to? And it started about freshman year, getting ready. The counselors, teachers, other admin in school ask, what's your future look like? What 4 year are you going to? Are you going to a junior college? What are you going to do after high school? And I think they put that in your brain so you really start thinking about it. And then at home, most of us, our parents want to know. And especially if our parents didn't go to college themselves right out of high school. So they begin to ask, they start to do their financing and figure out, okay, is it even possible for us to pay and so forth? I mean, you have some parents that start bank accounts, college accounts before or right at the birth of their child or children, plural. And then you have some, and I would say a lot, they don't have the money in there living paycheck to paycheck. So where I'm getting at is for the parents that couldn't afford it, they want their child to live better. They don't want their child or children to live paycheck to paycheck. Makes total sense, right? Nobody wants to be working their buns off and be living paycheck to paycheck. And for the people that know the struggle, grew up poor, grew up barely making it, putting food on the table and having a roof over their heads was the main thing, and survival. The question then comes, they want their kids to do great. They want to give them the best that they possibly can. Some parents work their butts off and do what they can and still can't meet everyday needs. Most of the time, if 99% of the time, it's not that they wish they can't pay their bills or they can't provide a better life for their children. It's just the way things go sometimes. That's why I believe parents that grew up in that way really want to instill going to college in utmost importance. And as students, as their kids, especially when we just get into high school, we're getting into ninth grade, we're trying to figure everything out. But I mean, teachers and everybody like that start asking, which is what their job, their point to try to get to you so you have an idea or at least a thought in the back of your head. I don't know what I want to do. It's 4 years away. I think that's long enough. I'll deal with it in a few years. I think that's most high schoolers for the most part. And then you have some students that they've been planning for college since they were 5 years old because they want to go to an Ivy League like Harvard, Brown, Yale, Dartmouth, those high prestigious schools. And then you have the really, really smart people, the smart students that they're not even thinking about it. They'll take the SATs and get some crazy score and go to one of those schools or go to a UCLA, a USC, a UIC. So you've got like the pinnacle from the Ivy League all the way down to state schools, basically. And I mean like a Cal State LA, Cal State, San Diego, those type of schools. And every state has that equivalent. For the most part, that's what most students go into. Then you have people like me that started out at a JC, a junior college, which for people that don't know, a junior college is a 2 year, usually you get your AA or you get certifications or what have you. It's a stepping stone for the people in school, in high school that didn't do well, didn't try, and couldn't get into 4 years. They went to community college to get their GPAs up. They went to college to do their general ed. Then that way it's easier for them to transfer over to a 4 year. and it's a lot less expensive. And I mean, when I was going to school in the early aughts, that's what I did. I went straight from high school into a JC because number one, I didn't take the SATs. I had no confidence and I didn't try in high school. And I was one of those that didn't have confidence in myself to try to go to a 4 year. I was actually scared to leave home and do that and go, you know, figure things out. So I got my first real job right out of high school, like a Monday through Friday at a bank. And then I was working back office at the bank. And then I noticed within 6 months, I already had it in my mind that there's no way I'm going to be able to move up without a college degree. I began to ask my supervisors, ask around my colleagues if they went to college, if they have the 4 year or an AA or what have you. My coworkers were telling me they were either in school or they just had a high school diploma. Then I asked around again to other departments on our same floor and in the, the lunchroom. You get to know these people. And both my aunt and uncle were SVPs in the company and they were there for years. So at that level, you have to have a degree, especially in banking. I then at that point talked to my grandma, talked to my family so I could get their input because I wanted to have a better understanding. And I wasn't even looking at the price tag at that point. I was just wondering, I struggled through high school. How am I going to do it at a JC, On top of that, I was working full time in LA and I lived in Orange County and I worked Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So I could only go to night school and take classes in the evening. So I finally decided to do it. And the next semester, I'm working full time and going to school part time. My major, of course, was music production because, I wanted to be the next Dre. I wanted to be the next Storch. I wanted to be the next Timbaland. So I thought that was what you do. You learn music. You learn production. That was short-lived, though. After I talked to my professor who was working on his PhD in music theory, and he basically said to the whole class, those of you that want to become this huge producer, this musician, a celebrity, somebody huge, a superstar, a rock star, odds are it's not going to happen. 99% of musicians and singers, they don't get their big break. They do shows, small little shows. They do sessions, recording sessions, that kind of stuff. Or they produce behind the scenes and write, that kind of thing. And he was just being truthful that the majority of musicians are broke. He made that very clear. And in my head, I didn't want to be broke. So within a day, I go to my counselor and I need to change my major, which at that time, since it was a JC, it was more like general ed classes. So it really didn't matter. But anyhow, getting back to the whole education portion, is it worth it? Is it worth the cost? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the struggle, the blood, sweat, and tears? Most of us, we're going to have to work. We're going to have to take out student loans. We don't have mommy and daddy paying for it. But I'm really not going to get into that so much because I had a lot of help from my family for the first few years of my JC career. Many work for a few years, save up so they can pay cash for school, which that's a great idea. If you can do that, awesome. Some just take out tons of student loans. And that brings me to my next point, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good part, you get excited when you apply to a school after you finally decide that you're going back to school or you're going to school. You get excited that, okay, admission, I'm accepted, yay. Then comes the cost. And we're just not talking about the classes. We're talking about the other a million fees that there are. They have admin fees, they have tech fees, they have book fees, all of these little fees that aren't included necessarily. There are reports out there, the average tuition for a 4 year, 2024 estimates are around $24,000. There's also more reports that a lot of students get grants and some of those equal up to 14,000. So you're looking at what, 10,000 a year, give or take. And that's just some reports. And these are 2024 numbers. Some of the Ivy Leagues for 4 years comes to be around 180,000 for the 4 years. When you're a teenager, those sums, for most of us anyways, that's sticker shock. Even the 24 grand, even the 10. Let's say you get the 17, the 14,000 in grants, you're still looking for a good portion that you have to pay back. If you don't have the cash, you're going to do student loans and you're going to defer it most likely until you're in your senior year or until you graduate and you find a job, you get comfortable. So a few years after that, you make arrangements. So we already have, you got the letter and you got in. Then you find out the cost and shit bricks, most likely, or your parents shit bricks, or you know that for the next 20 years you're going to be paying. Then you go to school, you work hard, you graduate, you start looking for jobs. Hopefully you get one. And remember, if you do take out these student loans, they're accruing interest one way or the other. Even if you defer it, they're still earning interest. So you have to, of course, pay the principal on top of the interest when you're done. And that interest, even though they capped it at max at 6.9%, is still growing exponentially. And then what about if you don't finish in 4 years? What if you're going part-time or 3/4 of the time or what have you? Or what about if you do finish, let's say the 2 years, even if you got 70% of that grant paid, the grant paid for 70% of that. Then you get into the 4 year, you pay, let's say 40% of that. So you get 60% grants, what have you. And these are all just numbers I'm bringing out of the sky. Then you want to go to graduate school. And oh boy. And while you're going to school, when you're going to college, you need food, you need electricity, you have utilities. You're sort of adulting at that point. So you need to make money, or you max out your student loan, live frugally, and kind of pay yourself while you're going to school. That option is not a smart one. Take it from yours truly. And when you get into grad school, the federal loan limits go up to 138,000. Now you're thinking, that's a lot of money. Yes, that is a lot of money. So you begin to think, okay, I'm near the end. Let's say, for example, you're in grad school and you hopefully are in a major that can make you money. There's reports out there a 4-year grad will make $1 million over their lifetime more than a high school grad. And then a graduate will make even more. Now that's average. And, these numbers, of course, they vary, of course, person to person, year by year. But it gets you thinking. You're like, okay, if the feds are going to loan you up to an amount for a master's program, and we're not even talking about if you're going to med school, if you're going to become a lawyer, if you're in law school, if you're a scientist or something like that. I'm just saying, let's go liberal arts to become a teacher, or you want to go get an MBA. If you do those, if you go online and do your classes online, which I think virtually every single university now, you can do some type of either hybrid or online, because people have to work, people have families, older people are going in to back to school, meaning they decide at 25, hey, I want to go back, or they go back at 60, what have you. But I'm talking about the people that are straight out of, they're going from, let's say, JC to 4-year to their grad school. Once you're done with that grad school, let's say you're working and you get you finish, you get a job, and then 6 months, a year later, you start paying on that loan. And let's say that loans with graduate, with undergrad, let's say a lot of these colleges, especially online, 29 a year for a master's program. You do that for 2 years at 60. So let's say you max out at 120, 130. At 6.9 interest max, you're averaging it's about 17, 1800 a month for the minimum payment if you don't make any arrangements with them. Now, for a lot of us, that's our rent and car payment. That's a mortgage. Whether nowadays, if that's on the low end or not with the mortgage, I don't know. Anyways, what I'm getting to is the sticker shock. But if you have an idea of when you're going to school and maybe you're paying some off or you put extra money towards it so it's not as high, you can finagle things and you can work on things in order to, limit that dire shock at the end. The Department of Education and their contracted people loan servicers, what have you, there's a plethora of different programs. A big one and a common one is an income-driven repayment plan. They base it off of your income, and usually it's anywhere between 5 to 15% of your gross of how much you have to pay. And like I said, there's tons, IDRs, there's pay as you earn, there's all of these different, as I mentioned, there's all of these different programs. Why am I bringing this up? Because there's over $1 trillion of student loan debt out there. There's millions of us, and I say us because I'm one of them, can't afford a $1,700-1,800 a month minimum payment. And these are loans you can't default on. It's not like you let a car loan you let the car become repossessed. No, this is the federal government. They're going to get their money one way or the other. They will garnish your checks. They will take your tax refunds. They will put a lien on your house. And for those that are thinking, well, I'm young, I have 160,000 plus in student loan debt and it's accruing interest every day, I'll just file bankruptcy. I'm young, it'll be on my record for like 10 years. Yeah, that's not a thing. You cannot put your student loans into your bankruptcy if you decide to do that. So if you're trying to do bankruptcy just to get that loan, those student loans out of your purview, it's not going to happen. That's not how it works either. And many people are finding after they graduate, they're having trouble finding jobs. Even if they get a job, they're not making 6 figures right off the bat with the 4-year most of the time. They may, on a high note, 80, business, maybe 100. And that's, again, on the high end. Average is probably like 40 if you're coming out of a 4-year. Now, to a 22-year-old, that's not bad money. It's a start. For those of us that have been working for 20 years that are not in service roles, that work for nonprofits and that sort of thing, that's not a lot of money. I mean, it's not a lot of money, period. For the average grad, we're not going to be doing $250,000 a year. So that brings me to the next part. I already touched on the good, already touched on the bad, and the ugly is you're going to be paying for these loans for multiple decades unless you're somehow able to pay them off in a reasonable amount of time where you don't accrue tons and tons of interest. And for those that do it, and for those that pay them off and are able to do that within a 10-year time frame, that's awesome. But paying on it for 25 years, if you think it's worth it for you, go for it. Me personally, I think I made the right decision on finishing because I knew the second that I started taking loans on, I knew that I would be paying for the majority of my life. I knew that going in. I knew the cost. I knew all of these things. And whether you say it's smart or dumb, whatever your opinion is, you're entitled to that opinion. I'm an adult. I did what I did. I took out the loans I took out, and that's it. One thing I can say, though, is I don't believe they should be 100% forgiven. I believe the point of school is to set you up for a good career, for advancement, to make more money, to provide. But schools charging 50,000 a year, 25,000 a year tuition is a lot. And again, many of us at 18 or at 22, 25, we're not thinking 50 years ahead. Especially if we're in school, we're focusing on getting through that because it's a very stressful time. And just focusing on the loan part of everything while you're in school is going to derail you from doing well in your classes. Now, this is, I'm saying, for average people. They make it super easy. And I mean, the government makes it super easy for you to max out these student loans. Tuition goes up, fees increase. So then inflation comes through. 20 years ago, going to a JC in California, you were paying $60 a class. Now, I don't know what it is now, but what I'm getting at is we all know things are getting more expensive. Things have been getting more expensive for years and years. Point I'm trying to make, though, is by making it super easy to get tens of thousands of dollars worth of loans at just a signature by going to school doesn't help the students in the long run. And what I mean is no loans with interest are good for a long period of time. Try to pay them off as fast as you can. Just like credit cards, it's a business. They loan you money, you pay it back. Okay, cool. We pretty much all get that. But when schools increase their tuition year by year by year, and students have to get loans, higher and higher and higher, you have a $200,000 student loan and you're taking gender studies, you're taking liberal arts, or you're getting a degree in liberal major, you're not going to be making money. It's not useless because you decided to go for that major. So that meant something for you. Nobody should be knocking you for the major and minor that you decided to study. Just know that you need to repay that. If you find out whatever your degree is and the field that you go into, you're not making any money because the majority of people thinking that particular major is useless, even though you find it very important, in the real world, it may not be. It's not a nursing degree. It's not a business degree. It's not an economics degree. It's not a science degree to be a teacher. It's not a liberal arts degree to become a professor, this, that, and the other thing. I'm not denying that you chose that major for that reason, but just know you have to pay it back. Bottom line. I know I have to pay my loans back. I don't expect anybody to pay for them for me. Now, do I think having to pay $1,800 a month when you make 40 grand a year, let's just say, there's no way you can make that payment. Now, granted, maybe you shouldn't have taken that student loan and have it get to that point. But if you're already, let's say, at 100 grand and you haven't finished your degrees or your degree, you just spent 100 grand plus because you've got the interest with nothing. Let's just say that. And then you decide to finish and you finally finish with an extra 40, 50 grand. Well, it may not make economical sense. And yes, you do have to pay their student loans back, as I've said multiple times in this episode. But also, it shouldn't be this easy to get loans that exorbitant. Schools should not cost 50 grand a year if you're going to a state school or you're going online or something like that. A master's program shouldn't be 40 grand a year, 30 grand a year. It's a business. I get it. I'm pro-business, whatever. But to the average person, when they're signing that, they're not really looking in to the longevity of it. So for the last few years since the pandemic, I think it's 2020, student loan servicers haven't been going after students defaulted on their student loans. Congress a few years ago said that they need to, but the prior administration just foo-fooed that away. Well, we have the new administration, and in May, they're going to start trying to get some of that cash back. They're going back and they're looking at the defaulted loans and going after those people. Now, when I mentioned this before about all the different programs and stuff, as long as you communicate with them, especially if you don't have a job or you're hurting in a way, you're on disability, you just don't have the income, they're willing to work with you. And I know this from working at a law firm for a bit, went out to people with defaulted student loans to get them to start repaying. Because with a defaulted student loan, it's very hard to get car loans, to get home loans, to refi. And a lot of people don't even know that they're in default. And what I mean by that is they might have defaulted 20 years ago and they just never paid attention. Whether they knew it or not, anyways, when they go and try to refi their house, they see the mortgage company sees that they defaulted and they need to reach out in order to get that home loan or that refi. They need to reach out and make a deal with the servicer to get back on good standing. And then once they get up back on good standing, they can reapply for that refi and hopefully get it. But as a default, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to get a refi. They want to see that proof. I would think most mortgage companies would not loan to people that have default student loans. Therefore, make the call, contact them. As scary as it is, let's not make it get to that point. You can apply online for different programs. You can reach out online if you don't feel like calling them. You can go to, studentaid.gov and make payment arrangements. You could make as low as $5 a month if you have very low income to $0, depending on your situation. So there's no reason to be necessarily keep on defaulting on loans, especially with the federal government, because just like death and taxes, they're going to get their money one way or the other. Now, I haven't really heard of any defaulted student loan people actually going to jail over this. I haven't heard anything like that. I don't know if it's that extreme. It could be, I'm not sure, but that's not to get anyone scared. You decided when you did to sign and to take out those loans. Whether they were super easy to get or not, it's still the point that you need to make sure you pay it back. Do the best you can. And why I'm saying all of this is because I'm in that same boat. And the pandemic did something where they started the SAVE program. They've done all of these different programs where they've basically put all the loans on forbearance for like years and years. And now it's stuck in the courts and things are just kind of wacky. And everyone seems to be freaking out all of a sudden now that the new administration is deciding to go after these people that have defaulted on these student loans. Which, think about it, the government's a business. The government's a business, which means they're going to want to get their money. And this whole entire time, these loans are being collected on interest. These loans have interests, whether they're 4%, 3.5%, 5, 5.9, 6.5. Any way you look at it, and it also depends on what kind of loan you have as well. Long story longer, just thinking of it in the way of you took the loan out, you went to school, whether you finished or not, take responsibility and pay it back somehow. Make arrangements, whatever your situation is, you have an obligation. And if it was that easy just to file bankruptcy on a $150,000 student loan, I think I would say most of us would do that in the long run. I don't know. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just saying the simple fact of when the average person has a lot of loan debt, you begin to think, was it worth it in the first place to go to school? I've done a lot of research in the last few weeks on this subject because I was preparing for this episode. And what I found was reports from Deloitte, reports from the Fed of New York are still saying that education, and meaning after high school, college, is still a good bet. It's still a good investment. There's still advancement. The question, though, is for a normal person, is it? And that's going to be on a case by case basis. Trade schools are great too. And from what I also understand is that, especially in the last 2 decades, people that have graduated from trade schools that have got their commercial driver's license so they can drive trucks, also mechanics, HVAC technicians, electricians, plumbers, those are all hard jobs, but you can make a decent wage. And you don't have to go out and spend $150,000 on school and get yourself in so much debt that you'll be paying that off for 3 decades. Making the right decision is not always the easiest. Making a decision at 18 versus making a decision at 40, totally different view, totally different mindset, totally different circumstances altogether. Would a person that's 40 and goes back to school decide to spend $150,000 when their ROI is going to be they're making 60 a year? I really don't know. It all depends on their circumstances and what they're willing to give up and willing to work for. And if they're willing to understand that that's a large sum of money. When you're 18 and you're still developing mentally, you're not necessarily thinking about paying a $150,000 loan off. And why I'm saying that amount and why I've been saying that amount, I'm talking with principal and interest overall. And of course, it may be counting from there. I'm just saying for people that have children or people that are thinking about going to school, people that want different options, just think about it. You're not getting a loan from like Bank of America. And I wanted to hit the point so many times on this because I feel a lot of people don't understand this. They don't know about it. They get themselves in a hole and they don't know why necessarily. Yes, it may be a lack of education about what they're signing. It may also be because these are for-profit institutions that want to make money. Get the word out even more than it is about the dangers of this, of these student loans. Many people aren't able to pay back those sums. So just be mindful. If you've got a teenage child and you want them to go to school, maybe let them go to a JC. Let them take a year off. Who knows? Whatever your situation is, it's yours and you have the right to do that. What I'm getting at is at the end of the day, at the end of the career, is it worth it? Is the ROI, return on investment? And I'm just not talking on the financial side. I mean, is it worth your time? Is it worth the energy? Is it worth the struggles, the stress? Is it worth it? This goes into, is it worth it as well for people that are in their 30s or 40s thinking about going back to school or starting a new career? So they're already going back to school. Is it worth that financially? They may have families already. It's a case by case basis. And it's a scary thing to think of, a loan that's just hanging out on your brain after you graduate, especially since you've worked so hard all the years trying to go work hard, and then you see the statement after 6 or 7 months of after you graduated, and many might say, I don't know if that's the right decision that I made. Maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have done that. Just keeping in mind of the situation at hand. Yes, companies hire college graduates and you don't need a degree. From my observation, I can see both sides. I can see that it may not be worth it financially. I can also see that it can be worth it financially, especially if you have student loan forgiveness, if you have grants, if you have scholarships, all of that good stuff. I can see why it would be a motivation to go, but it's just not going either. It's just not doing these classes. It's actually going to learn. It's going to do your best. And at the end game is to graduate. A lot of people don't. A lot of people go for years and years. Things happen and they can't finish. That's understandable. I mean, it took me good 10 years to get my MBA, but I was so determined to finish at any cost. Now, financially, maybe that would be stupid. Maybe that was stupid of me. I didn't want to just have something and fall short on something and I didn't complete. I wanted to finish it. And I originally went to grad school to get the degree, the advanced degree, so I could, promote and do that whole normal business type deal. You get a graduate, you go to grad school, you work, you promote, throw that on your resume, and it looks much better. Yes, you had to get to that point. You had to graduate already. You have to show that you completed it. And if you have this student loan that's 120 grand and you haven't finished the degree, even if it's an undergrad, what's the point? And that's another thing you can think of as well, is when you're in school is, are you going to finish it in a decent amount of time? Are you planning on in 4 years having that degree finished? Are you planning on having a family? Are all these things in your purview? And are you focused to get this done? Because a lot of people, they go to school, they like it, and they find it very educational and they love it. Then something happens and they end up quitting, or their workload, their family, they can't do it anymore. I would just say from a lot of experience in this matter, just think and rethink, ask for feedback, talk to people that have graduated, talk to people that have taken years and years to get their degrees, and talk to people that have paid outright for their education. Talk to people that have student loans. Talk to people that have massive student loans and get their point of view. With all that, throw it in a soup, stir it, and find out what's best for you. Because at the end of the day, this is for you and only you. Don't let anybody stop you. If you want to go, go. Just know you got to pay it back one way or the other. So on that note, it's all about you. You got this. Psychic out. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe and leave a comment. You can hear me on all major platforms and socials under the Mind of Psychic podcast. See you next time.